One day I'll be consistent with my videos, but for now, we're just going to get into my March 2021 wrap-up. Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Chrissy. If you're new to my channel, I talk about books, and I'm talking about the books that I read in March. The first book that I read in March is Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. As you guys can see, this is a Star Wars book. This book was published before Disney bought the rights for Star Wars, so it's now part of the Legends collection. So in other words, it's not technically canon, but we can pretend it's canon. We can pretend the Legends verse is the true verse. This book, we follow Luke, Leia, and Han as they go against Admiral Thrawn, who is someone left over from the Empire who desperately wants to seek vengeance. There's a lot more to it in this book than that. For example, there's also a character that gets introduced named Mara Jade who hates Luke Skywalker and just wants to kill him. Like, she's like, can't we just murder him? Can't we just see him dead? Some of the things I liked in this book. Leia continues to be an amazing character. I love that she's this just strong-willed diplomat who also knows that she's not exactly the best kind of fighter. She will fight though, like she'll throw some hands for sure. But she knows that that's not her strongest suit, and in fact in this book, she wants to learn a little bit about Force use, and she enlists Luke's help in that, and I thought that was a really cool thing. You also get to learn more about the mysterious Wookiees, or at least they're mysterious to me. I'm not the biggest Star Wars buff. I actually read this book because my partner really wanted me to read it. He loves Star Wars, and he loves the books, and this was one of his favorite series. I think it's the first in a trilogy. So I don't know a lot about the Star Wars characters, and I was really interested in the Wookiees. I love Chewbacca, and I thought it was great that we got more information about them in this book. Also, Mara Jade is a great original character. I wasn't quite sure if I would like her when she was first introduced into the book. Sometimes when authors create their own characters in a pre-established world, it can get a little bit tricky and iffy, but I thought Mara Jade was a good balanced character. She's equal parts mysterious and very transparent. You know that she hates Luke, and she doesn't, like, she just wants him dead. That's it. She just wants him to be mauled and murdered, killed. And she cannot hold that back. When these two meet, it's a really interesting dynamic. Mara just cannot help but show her distaste of Luke. And Luke is trying really hard to be like, what did I do to you? Really interesting scenes. I liked their scenes a lot together. There wasn't a lot that I disliked about this book. I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of the pacing in around the first half. It felt slow to me. And then in the second half, a lot of stuff happens at once, but I felt like that pacing matched the story a little bit better. Overall, I will be continuing this book, and I'm looking forward to the next one. The next book I read is The Cutting Season by Attica Locke. This follows a Black woman named Karen who is the manager of a plantation in Louisiana named Bellevue. And this is French for beautiful life. I'm sure some people found it very beautiful at the time. Karen oversees the tourism operations of the plantation and also manages the group of actors who play out this reenactment of Bellevue, or what's supposed to be a reenactment of Bellevue. It's a very washed up version of probably what actually happened in the past. Not important though. What is important is that one day there is a dead body found on the plantation, and then thus starts the mystery and thriller of who did it and who this person is that they found. Things that I liked about this book. The first one is that I don't really know a lot about the South or the plantation tourism industry, so it was an interesting look inside of that whole aspect of the South, and especially in Louisiana. It was really interesting to see that piece. It almost makes me want to look up more information about that specific industry because I find that fascinating. Like, it's just mind-blowing. And that Karen is the manager to it, I thought was a really interesting dynamic in that book. Another thing that I liked is the characters are complex with really intricate interpersonal relationships. You get the history of like Karen and her mom, and also Karen with the other workers, or actors, I should say, in the plantation, and then her relationship with the owners of that plantation I thought were pretty interesting. Though I will say that this leads into the thing I don't like about this book, and that is I kind of wish that there was a little bit more depth with the relationship that Karen has with the owners, and particularly one one of the owner's sons. I think his name's Bobby. But it kind of feels like there's a lot left unknown about the relationship that Karen has with the two sons of the owners. You can kind of see her relationship with Ray, who runs the plantation, or at least oversees it, over Karen. I just kind of wish there was more interplay between Karen and Bobby. Like, we see a little bit, but not much. And it kind of just, I think, would have deepened some of the plot points in this book. Overall, I like this book, and I will definitely be looking out for Attica Locke's works. The next book that I read is Enjoying the Show by Marie Hart. This is kind of a step into erotica that I did not plan to take in March, but here we are. Originally, I was just looking for a really short romance to kind of pass the time with, but ended up getting into this one. Haley is a peeping Tom bombshell, and Gage is the guy that she peeps on, and he kind of sort of stalked Haley at one point in time. Needless to say, they're both good looking and like each other, so that makes it all okay. I don't really do a lot of star ratings for books on my reviews for my channel, but I will tell you that I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads because it just didn't play out very well. Like, it's not even so much that it's erotica in and of itself, but I felt like some of the plot points that the author adds in just doesn't really pan out. Like, it's a very rushed bit because it's supposed to be a short book. For example, there is a derivative of the plot line of, does he like me for my looks, or does she like me for my money? The author does her best to try and come up with a good resolution for this, but it just fell flat. I think this could have been a really interesting plot point between those two, especially given how fast that they got together just based on physical appearance. So I think that could have been an interesting avenue to go down, but unfortunately just really rushed. It just wasn't very well done in my eyes, and the resolution just left a lot to be desired. The last 4 books I read are part of a series. They're actually the Bridgerton books, and the first 4 I read in March. I actually read them in very quick succession, so that should tell you that I liked them a lot. The first one is really the basis of the Bridgerton TV show, and it is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. This book features Daphne Bridgerton, and it's not her first rodeo in the season thing that happens in London, where she's trying to find a husband. Unfortunately, she keeps getting friend-zoned by all the dudes that she goes after, because she's just too nice. She's just too nice. Then Simon comes along, who is a duke, who doesn't really want to be a duke, who just kind of wants to be left alone. Then he comes up with a brilliant idea for them to follow the fake dating trope. They pretend to be together, so that way dudes will see that Daphne has some things going on for her. And then Simon will just be left alone from all the ambitious mamas that are trying to get their daughters married off. So that's the premise of this book. Now, I actually really like the book for the most part, but there's a specific plot point that I don't necessarily want to give away that unfortunately does not make this a 5-star read for me. It lowers the stars to a more average star length. If you've watched the show, you probably know what plot point I'm talking about because it happens towards the end of the first season. It blightens an otherwise really good book. I love the narration. I love the interactions. It's a really funny read. Pretty much what I would think of as a really good romantic comedy. Violet Bridgerton, by the way, is my favorite character, and I just want her all the happiness in the world. I would have loved a full-length feature of her and Edward, but unfortunately, that does not happen. Overall, really good until that particular plot point. It wasn't enough to rid me of the series entirely, but enough to where I was just like, disappointed. The next book in the Bridgerton series is The Viscount Who Loved Me, with my singular tab that I did. I was originally going to do full reviews of these books, but then I read them so fast that I just didn't tab anything. Tabbed nothing. I tabbed the first book, but not as much as I probably would have otherwise. And then I kind of gave up with this book because I just really wanted to see what happened next. This features my least favorite Bridgerton, Anthony. He is far too overprotective, and he is kind of a jerk-face McJerkyson. However, I actually did like this book a lot, and I think that has to do with the other character, Kate. Anthony one day decides that he is going to get married. He's like, I need to settle down, I need to figure my stuff out. But he also decides that he's not going to marry for love, and instead he's going to be sensible and just marry the perfect match. He ends up finding that in Edwina. Edwina, who is beautiful, who comes from a somewhat okay family, who's a little bit broke, but that's okay. Who needs money when you have a lot of money yourself? Unfortunately, Anthony ends up falling for Kate, who is Edwina's sister. Now Anthony, who has vowed off love, is trying to figure himself out. Like, I love Kate, but I must marry Edwina because I'm not going to marry for love. And that's the whole plot of this book. Once again, I really love the narration. I think that this is a really funny book. The author has done so far a really good job of having good personalities match with each other. So both Kate and Anthony are very protective older siblings, and they kind of go about things in a very similar fashion, and it just ends up being really charming for the both of them and their relationship. Now, I will say that anyone looking to get into the Bridgerton series, please realize that this book does hold some of the thought processes of the times that it's written about. So, for example, they're talking about seasons and they're talking about marriage for not love, but rather, economics. And so there's things like, you have to do your wifely duty. And it's not very often put upon into these books, and it's not even for very long periods of time. Like, I think it was a sentence that bothered me in this book about it, but be aware. And now moving on to my favorite of all the Bridgerton novels. So far, I've only read the first 4. It is An Offer from a Gentleman, and this is Benedict's book. He is the second oldest of the Bridgerton children. Really, if I'm going to summarize this book, it's really just Cinderella. Cinderella featuring Benedict and Sophie. Sophie is an illegitimate child, however, Benedict doesn't know that part. He meets her at a ball and then spends quite a bit of time trying to look for her after she disappears into the night. Sophie has an evil stepmother and 2 stepsisters. One of them torments Sophie and the other kind of just is very passive about all of it. At any rate, Sophie is trying to escape that fate and Benedict is looking for Sophie. So that's the primary plot of this book. One of the reasons why I really like this book above all the others is just because the interactions between Sophie and Benedict just are less inclined to be about society because of the plot points that Sophie is an illegitimate daughter. So there's not too much of them standing on ceremony with one another, at least like a fourth of the way in. After that, they don't really stand on ceremony with one another. I like that aspect of it, and also just like they seem to have one of the more healthy relationships between the others. Like Kate and Anthony argue a lot, and granted it's funny and it works for them. And then the whole Daphne and Simon thing in the first book kind of leads me to believe that Benedict and Sophie are kind of the most healthy of all the relationships. And lastly for this month is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. If you are watching the show and don't want to know about the books quite yet, turn away. Turn away because this is somewhat of a spoiler. This follows Penelope and Colin's story. So Penelope is, I think, in her 30s at this point, or like reaching her 30s. She's already come to terms that she's going to be a spinster, and she's like, we'll make it work. She's already prepared to be a woman who don't need no man. And then Colin comes along and decides that all along he likes Penelope. Or I shouldn't say all along. He just suddenly realizes he likes Penelope. I do like this book, but it's not my favorite of the series. As said, I think Benedict's book just worked out a lot better. I was really excited for Penelope and Colin's story, and it doesn't so much disappoint, but I kind of wished that there was another person who liked Penelope too. Like, it's just Colin. There's no jealousy plotline, and I almost kind of wish there was, because Penelope is an amazing character. She's wonderful, she's funny, she's intelligent, but no one really gives her a second glance until Colin. And I kind of wish that there was another person to come along and show Penelope that she's a wanted person. However, I say that, but it might be a really unique and good thing that doesn't happen. My wishes are irrelevant anyway. I don't even know why I like jealousy plotlines. I don't even like jealousy in my own life. But I like them in books. Those are the books that I read for March. If you have read any of those books, please let me know what you think about them. Or are you interested in reading any of those books? Please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this wrap up. And as always and forever, may